Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I am going to say it again, and frankly I think it fits, considering the new Democrat standard of constantly defending Hunter Biden. What kind of crack are these Democrats smoking? I mean, seriously. Just last week we were covering California Governor Gavin Newsom attacking Ron DeSantis and the state of Florida as being a fascist state, claiming if you want to experience real freedom, come to the state of California. And what did we say in response to that? We said, what kind of crack is this guy smoking? What alternate reality is this guy living in, where the state of California is more free than the state of Florida? Well, apparently Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom is not the only one who's completely lost his mind. In the Democrat Party, we now have Tennessee Democratic Representative Steve Cohen, who said one of the most dishonest, frankly intellectually bankrupt comments I've ever heard in my life, that apparently Canada has now supplanted the United States as the freest country in the world. Canada, with Supreme Leader Justin Trudeau, the man who praised the Chinese dictatorship, the man who shut down people's bank accounts. The list goes on and on and on. In a post-Roe world where American civil rights and civil freedoms are apparently being attacked, well, according to Democrat Representative Steve Cohen, Canada is now the freest country on the planet. One of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. Let me show you guys this interaction. Let me show you guys the Republican response. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, take a look at this. Your comments are absurd. Sparks fly in house after Tennessee Democrat calls Canada the freest country in the world. Just take a look at this.
American and love America and love this country, and I think it's a great country. But they said we're the freest country in the world. I think it was Miss Foster. Well, right now, Canada's the freest country in the world. And there are a few other countries along with Canada that are more free than America when we cut women away from having the opportunity to get their families and their bodies to be their choices.
That has to be one of the most ridiculous claims ever uttered in the House of Representatives. And actually, the claim is really easy to debunk without even getting into any of the real details. If Canada is such a free, desirable country, then why is it that every single left-wing lunatic and celebrity faux activist that constantly threatens leaving to Canada anytime they don't get what they want never actually goes? Well, it's simple because Canada is not exactly free at all. Canada is the freest country in the world, they say, as wannabe tyrant Justin Trudeau is doing the first thing that every dictatorship in the history of dictatorships has ever done, going after legal gun owners. In fact, Justin Trudeau even recently said that Canadians don't even have the right to practice self-defense.
And there are debates, and we have a culture where the difference is guns can be used for hunting or for sport shooting in Canada, and there's lots of gun owners, and they're mostly law-respecting and law-abiding. But you can't use a gun for self-protection in Canada. That's not a right that you have in the Constitution or anywhere else. If you try and buy a gun and say it's for self-protection, no, you don't get that. You get it for hunting. You can get it for sport shooting. You can take it to the range. No problem, as long as you go through our rigorous background checks.
Oh, sounds like freedom to me. Not only do Canadians not possess the right to self-defense and the right to arm themselves, which is frankly a human right, I don't care what anyone says, but Canadians also don't have the First Amendment, at least not in the American sense. There is no real First Amendment right to full freedom of speech in Canadian law. And that's why bills like Bill C-16, which Jordan Peterson fought against in his rise and claim to fame, are able to pass and become law without the Canadian Supreme Court stepping in and saying, nope, that's unconstitutional. See, that's the beauty of the American system, and that's why it's the freest country on earth. Because when the New York governor implements laws that go after your rights, the Supreme Court can come in and reaffirm your right and your freedom to conceal carry, to carry a firearm, and to defend yourself and your community. That doesn't exist in the Canadian system. And the leftist argument is what? Oh, well, at least you could still practice infanticide up till 24 weeks. Well, that's freedom. No, that's not freedom. That's, as I always say, freedom of consequence. But Republican Representative Mike Johnson said it a whole lot better than me. Take a look at this.
Mr. Cohen is wrong. Canada's not the most free country in the world, young people. America is the greatest nation in the world. We are the most free, most successful, most powerful nation because finally now we have been We've tried to live up to the ideals articulated in the Declaration of Independence. And finally, now the Supreme Court, after 50 years, nearly 50 years of an atrocity, has brought us back to that truth. Brought us back to that truth. It's my time. I will not yield, Mr. Cohen, because your comments are absurd. This hearing is absurd.
Your comments are absurd.
This
You're
hearing
absurd.
It's Mr. Johnson's time, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you. This hearing is absurd. The Democrat majority has called us here for this hearing entitled "The Threat to Individual Freedoms in a Post-Roe World." Come on. The first inalienable individual freedom is the right to be born. It's the right to life. We boldly declared that in our nation's birth certificate. America should continue to uphold the sanctity of human life. And state and local and federal government officials have a duty, a constitutional responsibility to protect that fundamental right.
The first inalienable freedom is the right to be born. That's what we call a KO finished. You can see how unhinged Mr. Cohen was, trying to yell over him, demanding that he yield his time. I mean, what an unhinged nut this Cohen guy is. And what a ridiculous concept. I mean, he could have picked so many different countries as examples for his freedom argument. One that comes to mind is maybe Switzerland, but of all of them, he picked Canada. Canada, a country that over the last couple of decades has become such a socialist nation that in many cases, you don't even have the basic freedom to enter business. People talk about universal health care. Well, in Canada, or in the majority of the country, you can't even open a private practice. You can only work for the government, unless you're doing like plastic surgery or something. Oh, sounds like freedom to me. No, sounds like a government oligarchy. Sounds like socialism. Canada that just legalized the use of cannabis. Well, in most places in Canada, people that were hoping to maybe, open a mom and pop shop, start a small business so that they can jump onto the train and join the booming economy within this world, well, they don't have the right to open a small business because, again, it's totally controlled by the government. Only government stores and major oligarchies that the government chooses to produce the product are allowed to participate. Doesn't sound like freedom to me. It's the same thing with liquor. There's a liquor commission. You can't go to a liquor store. You have to go to the government liquor store. In other words, in many ways, Canada is a socialist nation. Entire industries controlled by the government. That doesn't sound like freedom to me. That sounds like the exact opposite. Not to mention just recently with the Freedom Convoy that we covered, Canadians fed up with the restrictions and the lockdowns, losing the right to work in their own country, the right to travel. And what did Justin Trudeau and his government do? He essentially publicly called them terrorists, people representing unacceptable viewpoints, ordered the arrest of peaceful protesters. There's a lady named Tamara Lich, who is currently being held. Her bail was revoked and she will remain in custody for organizing a peaceful protest. Then Justin Trudeau's federal government thought that it was totally acceptable to freeze and close people's bank accounts who had donated to the Freedom Convoy or even bought merch. That doesn't sound like a free country to me. That sounds like a technocratic tyranny. But of course, doesn't exactly surprise me. That's the direction Canada is taking under a big socialist government. That's the way it's always gone throughout history. 100 years of documented history since the rise of socialism, and it always ends the same way. Now, doesn't it? Oh, and here's another one that you keep hearing all over the YouTube sphere these days. Canada's new Bill C-11, which gives the Canadian government complete control to regulate all online social media and streaming services, including user-generated content. In other words, the Canadian government is now passing a bill that gives them power to regulate and control what Canadian YouTubers can't say. It gives them the right to regulate their content if they want. They're claiming that, no, of course not, we would never do that, even though we're including that provision in the bill. They're pretending as if they're acting in good faith, even though they're lying and totally misleading and misrepresenting what the bill itself stands for or states. But again, folks, in every big socialist government, what do you think's going to happen in the end? That they're going to create this power for themselves to control user-generated content online, and that they're just not going to use it? Just like they had those emergency powers during the Freedom Convoy protest, and it was totally inappropriate for them to use, but then of course they did, because that's what big socialist government does. What an absurd notion that Canada is now the freest country on earth. Absolutely idiotic. But of course, you know how Democrats are. It's a one-track mind, a one-issue mind. And right now, the big thing is abortion. The big thing is Roe v. Wade. And so I guess if we're talking about freedom metrics, then apparently the highest standard, the top priority, the only standard for a free society is unregulated abortion. Stupid. I mean, just stupid. There is no way average people are listening to this stuff and being convinced by this ridiculous Democrat rhetoric. Canada is so free and the United States is such a fascist cesspool, then it's a whole lot easier to migrate to Canada than it is to the United States. I mean, the border's basically open. Just go right on ahead. Nobody's stopping you. The only thing that's stopping you is facts and reality that you're actually a whole lot more free, and there's a whole lot more opportunity and prosperity in the United States of America. And so you'll virtue signal on Twitter, but you'll never actually go. Another absurd leftist statement that just doesn't hold up. But that's what I got for you guys on this one. Thanks for watching, friends, and I'll see you on the next one.